Heartfixer just answered one of the biggest questions in Season 6, and the answer changes everything. After waiting for so long, Heartfixer finally saw the light of the day with its release on Tfue, and honestly, I think this episode established way more than anyone expected. And because this episode actually makes Lady Chaos feel more logical, I felt like we had to review this one first. Welcome back to Jeffrey Talks, I'm Jeff, and today we're talking Heartfixer. Long story short, this episode answers one of the biggest questions of the series. Is Chrysalis actually able to akumatize Marinette? And the answer is yes. Because what Chrysalis really needs is a devastated Marinette who feels like she has lost everyone's support around her, and while this happened here through a lie, Adrien was able to save the universe because he realized it was all a setup. But that immediately raises a much bigger question. What happens when the truth about Gabriel finally comes out? What happens when Marinette is left completely alone, especially when we already know how Adrien and Alya react to lies in general, and especially to Gabriel's lie? Are we heading towards some kind of miraculous civil war, or are we building toward another Akumatized situation, except this time Adrien won't be the only one trying to save her? And I've got to say, I'm really glad this episode delivered on the long-awaited akumatization of Marinette, while also giving us major insight into Marinette, Adrien, the chopped trio, and Chrysalis. Let's start with Marinette. First of all, I'm glad this episode gave us Tiki actually talking some sense into Marinette, because that's something I've really missed throughout Season 6. We've had less and less meaningful input from the Kwamis, and more of them just going along with whatever their holders say without hesitation. A perfect example is Lady Chaos, where Tiki simply says,
Adrien seems to be feeling much better thanks to the things you asked people to tell him.
Our Tiki would never normally support adding more salt to the wound. She would push back, and that's why I appreciated her here, because she actually becomes the factor that pushes Marinette toward telling Adrien the truth about his father. And honestly, Marinette is under so much pressure that it makes complete sense. This girl has more than 15 journals just about the lies she's telling her boyfriend, so what are we even doing at this point? The problem is that Marinette is choosing to do the right thing at the wrong time, because just when she finally wants to open up about Gabriel, the couple wreckers are already setting up a whole play to break Adrien apart. And I think that says a lot, because deep down, Marinette does want Adrien to know the truth, but at the same time, she doesn't want to lose him because she lied to him. Still, I feel like Marinette should know better by now, because the truth always comes out. No matter how hard she tries to hide it, it always returns in the end. And yet, by the end of the episode, Marinette still chooses to keep the truth hidden. Instead, she stores everything in Ladybug's yo-yo. And I really don't think I need to remind you what happened the last time Marinette kept important things inside that yo-yo. I genuinely believe someone else is going to get access to it, just like Felix did before. But at the same time, I'm actually glad our main character is going through an arc where she's morally grey instead of being written as completely and undeniably right all the time. Because what do you mean this show is finally acknowledging emotions and allowing its main characters to be akumatized without needing to hand over their Miraculouses or secret identities? Alya literally points this out by the end of the episode, and I loved that. We already knew something like this happened with Kagami in Season 5, where she knew who Ladybug was and still never told Monarch. But this time, I'm glad we actually got to see that kind of situation happen on screen instead of only hearing about it afterward. Now moving to Adrien. Even though this episode explores his reaction to lies through the romance angle, I still think it says a lot about his character overall, and I'm not gonna lie, I gave him the biggest side-eye when he told Nino,
N'essaie pas de me mentir, c'est pas comme si tu t'étais jamais intéressé à elle.
But at the same time, it was genuinely great to see Adrien angry about something and actually processing how deeply lies can hurt him. Adrien literally risks his identity when Marinette is in danger, and one of the most important lines in the episode comes when he's trying to bring Marinette back to her senses and says,
Comment j'ai pu croire que tu me mentais?
That line matters a lot. Because yes, Adrien and Marinette rebuild their trust here, but that doesn't mean it won't be destroyed again once the truth about Gabriel comes out and Adrien realizes just how much that lie hurts him too. And one of my biggest questions now is, when the truth finally comes out, how will Adrien realize that Marinette and Ladybug are the same person? As for Adrien and Alya's reactions, I thought they were spot on, because the entire setup was honestly insanely smart. Luik, Nelson, and Ray went all in trying to destroy this relationship, to the point where Luik and Ray were even kissing just to sell the lie even more, which is actually crazy. And I also have to give credit to the background music, because it elevated so many emotional moments in this episode, especially during the confrontation scene. That whole sequence genuinely shattered me. And another very important detail here is that Alya directly asks Marinette what she's hiding and tells her she's there if she ever wants to talk. That not only continues the post-credit direction from Revelator, but also feels like foreshadowing, especially since Sad Nancy is clearly shaping up to be an episode that deals with Gabriel's lie, not just in relation to Nora and her partner Twig, but on a much wider level. Another thing I really appreciated is how the background characters introduced this season are actually being used in ways that matter. They don't just feel like NPCs the way so many secondary characters did in the first arc. Sublime and Prem were both important here. We get more focus on Adrien's friendship with Sublime and how the chopped trio view that friendship through the lens of trust. And at the same time, Prem's honesty and growth allow him to become the one who reveals the truth to Adrien all along. Now, I didn't mention Aglae yet, because this episode only makes me even more suspicious that she really could be Lila in disguise. She wasn't part of the Greek class, she wasn't among the characters the couple records transformed into, and yet she still knew what Marinette did with Nino and even confronted Marinette about how wrong it was. That is extremely suspicious. And honestly, like someone said on Twitter, Aglae is basically the human version of Nuru, so there's just no way she has no connection either to that Miraculous or to Lila herself. There are already theories that Lila could be working with the Supreme, especially since Thomas replied with "interesting" to one of those theories, which would explain why she seems to be everywhere. So maybe Aglae is also part of the upgrades or enhancements that the Supreme showed Lila. And I also have to talk about the akumatization scene, because that whole sequence was on another level. From Lila's manipulation, to the resolution, to the animation, to the rendering, to the music, everything about it was just on point. Overall, I think this was a solid episode across the board, but it especially stood out in its animation, rendering, and music choices. The episode opens with an evil tone, the confrontation scene introduces new music, and the akumatization uses music from the Daydreams in Frozer. Those details are incredibly special to me, and they genuinely make the episode more rewatchable. And I also need to mention Cat Noir's transformation, because that felt like a real upgrade from the previous arc. It feels more dynamic, more alive, even if the background itself is a little less saturated. Adrien's transformation in general is one of my favorites this season. He shows more of his claws, the style feels stronger, and I'm genuinely obsessed with both the new visual direction and the new music. Now, if I had to point out one weak spot, it would definitely be the chopped trio. Right now, they still feel way too one-dimensional. Honestly, I don't really feel like there's enough motive behind what they're doing, and compared to characters like Sublime and Prem, they still feel underdeveloped, kind of flat, and honestly a little boring. I really hope the show gives them actual arcs and stronger motivations moving forward, because they have potential, but right now they still feel like one of the least interesting parts of the season. But overall, Heartfixer was a really strong episode, and I've got to say, I love pretty much every Pierre Duplier episode this season. I really hope he stays with the crew for the next seasons, because he clearly understands these characters, and the callbacks and parallels to previous episodes show that he's a genuine fan of the show. Now it's your turn. What are your thoughts on Heartfixer? Do you think this episode just proved that Marinette's akumatization is inevitable once Gabriel's truth comes out? Comment down below and I'll see you in the next video.